Just roll it in here. Got it. Got the recording here. Give me 1 second. It's rolling in, and folks starts to dial in. Let me put that on mute. Good morning, everyone. This is Roshan, CEO and co-founder of InsuredMine, and today I am very excited to start this I Am Impossible session with two of my wonderful friends, and I would say the forward tech thinking folks who have been helping the industry to adopt newer technologies and even pushing and challenging how the industry should be looking at. And so that's what we will be talking today, what industry or an agency tech stack should look like. Before we jump in, I will start sharing my screen here just to go through a couple of quick slides and talk about a couple of logistics, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, as we are starting on time here, which does not happen always. So I'm grateful for that. And we will run through a quick introduction and a couple of other logistics for the next 5 to 7 minutes, and then roll into a full-blown discussion around the agency tech stack, and then open it up for questions. Meanwhile, while we go through this, I would encourage all of you just to type in the chat which city are you from, so it gives us a perspective of the audience dialing in, and then we will have a couple more questions down the line. But yeah, just help us introduce yourself. As I already mentioned, and you can see in the video chat here, as well as in the video here, I have Jeff, who is the CEO and founder of Force3, and we will go through a full stack introduction, so hold on to that for a second. And I have Andrew here, who is the co-founder and co-CEO of Ascend. Ascend has been in the news in the recent history, and I'm sure Andrew would be very proud to talk about their funding and some of the cool stuff from the tech perspective they have been doing. And I'll co-host with them on this wonderful I Am Impossible session here as the CEO and co-founder of InsuredMine. As you guys have been hearing me for, this is what, our 7th episode, and the one and only who has helped us put this entire series of event. We are glad to have Montserrat on call with us as well. She's our customer success manager, and she has been, kind of rallying around this troop and this logistics, talking to all the agencies, getting a pulse of what they want to hear. And that is what is getting us going, and all this wonderful turnouts and all these conversations. So thank you all for joining. So now I will let Jeff quickly talk about Force3 and what you guys do and how it is helping agency from a tech perspective. Yes, several of you already know him from a website perspective of what he do, but I would not be able to do justice if I try to summarize that. So I'll let it go back to Jeff. Jeff, welcome and good morning.
Thanks, Roshan. It's good to see you. For the last time, I always see you at the conferences, so we see each other in person quite a bit, but always good to see you, and thanks for having me on this one. Yeah, so Forge3 started back in 2004. I worked at Chubb, big insurance carrier, as I think everybody probably knows, for a number of years. My dad worked at Chubb his whole career, and I kind of spun off from there and created Forge3. And 2016 is really when we created Active Agency, which is what people know us for now. So Active Agency is a website platform for independent insurance agencies. Well over 1,200 agencies now across the country, some international, but mostly across the country, using Active Agency. And it's everything from the front-facing website that somebody would see if they went to abcagency.com or whatever your website address is, but also a lot of sales tools and servicing tools. The thing that we're known for is clickable coverage. So you might have seen these interactive graphics where you might see a picture of a home on your website, and there's little hotspots on it. You click through it and you learn about your risks and your different solutions, which we all know is having the right coverage to mitigate those risks. But it's an interactive way to explain insurance to people. So there's 50 plus graphics, a bunch of content, video proposals, really cool personalization, kind of sales tools built in, like Hello Producer and some neat things like that. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Forge3.com is a place to go if you're curious about any of that kind of stuff. Or if you're a client and you already know of us, say hi in the chat and I'll say hi back. So thanks, Roshan, for having me.
All right, thank you. Thanks for joining. And And, obviously you guys do awesome stuff, and we have seen over the years, how this has kind of become a table stake now. Everybody needs to have a website. And now the question has evolved from having a basic website to how can I make it SEO optimized? And now you guys are doing all the cool stuff of making that your front end of your brand, and I think that all is so important. And we'll talk in details about that. But here we go with Andrew. Andrew, go ahead and talk a little bit about, how the whole premium finance, the whole payment gateway and all of that is kind of wrapping up and pushing the agency now.
Yeah, totally. Well, first off, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. And, we spent a little bit of time together virtually, so I'm excited to when we get to meet person to person in the conference circuit. Ascend is a very new company. We're about a year and a half old. And we previously come from different insurtechs, and my co-founder and I had sold our last insurtech to a bigger insurtech carrier. So have been in the space for a little bit and seen various flavors of insurtech. And that's really what led us to start Ascend, because what we noticed across these different experiences was that there's a huge amount of opportunity to modernize and work through different back-end processes in insurance. And the area that we felt we knew really well and wanted to focus on was insurance payments. So Ascend's goal is to make agency bill specifically as easy as direct bill. It's the easiest way to say it. And what that means is we handle and automate all of your agency bill processes, whether that's collecting premium in full, premium financing, but also the carrier payables or the payables to those markets, so that you both, handle the premium collection piece and give your customers a really modern, good agency branded experience. Remember, it's your customer, right? You don't want to send them to somebody else to pay, as well as simplify the work that most people have typically avoided agency bill for, which is the accounting, handling the payables to the carrier, the reconciliation, all that. We make all that go away. And so that's what we do at Ascend.
Awesome. That was a quick short sales spiel as well. So I like that part. So, it is so much inbuilt in us, in all the CEOs I have met over the last several years, that we never think about selling, but it just happens naturally.
Yeah.
That's what I call, ABC. It's always be closing.
Totally. Yeah. It's just second nature now.
Yeah. So let's quickly start about the landscape. So this is something, a couple of years ago, I did a session talking about the agency toolkit. And I did one session actually at Vertafore's event, probably a year or so ago. And I have seen a lot of interest from agencies wanting to know, hey, what should be my tech stack? What should be my toolkit? Where do I need to start? And here is, obviously, this does not do any justice to what an agency needs. This is just a starting point to start the conversation. I want to hear from both of you, just build a high-level segmentation. Either way, this is fluid. I want to hear from you guys. You have been in the industry for a while. Think from a typical small to a large agency, two different segments, and think about what should be a small agency tech stack minimum should be, what a large agency tech stack minimum should be. So why don't we start with you, Jeff?
Sure. So I think the way that's maybe easiest for me to kind of think about it is at Forge 3. So Forge 3, we have 25 or so employees, but we didn't always have 25 employees. We had one, me, at the early days, right? And along that kind of growth curve, you use different tools. And I think it's easy to get sucked into the tools and the tech and you kind of get lost with all of the ABCs, XYZs. But I've always looked at it, and I think it makes sense to look at it from an experience standpoint. So what are we trying to provide for clients ultimately? And is there a tool? What is the tool? Early days, it might be, let's say, for example, this is a really basic one, but let's say you want to remember a birth date or something, right? For a client, or someone's getting married or whatever, right? So you're thinking, how do I make this a really great experience for that person? I want to remember that. I want to do something on that date or ahead of the date or whatever. Well, if you have a couple of clients or dozens of clients or whatever, you don't need some complicated system to necessarily do that. you can literally have a sticky note or an Excel file or something early days, but you're using the tools that are appropriate for you at the stage where you are. Now, ultimately, as things grow, that becomes not sustainable. You can't just do that anymore. If you have hundreds and eventually thousands of clients and whatever, you need to kind of automate those things. But I think at like a 30,000 foot view, I always look at it as, what are we really trying to accomplish as the end goal? And then work backwards from there and then figure out what are the different tools that might be available that are a good fit for where we are as a company, to help reach whatever those ultimate, end goal would be. And I think it's a really kind of easy way perhaps of looking at it, but I've seen a lot of folks look at it the opposite way, which is just, whether at conferences or whatever, you're in the keynotes and you're like, oh my gosh. And you're like, yes, somebody, like, sign me up. And you have a bunch of things, but they really don't work together, or they're not accomplishing whatever that goal is, right? So I would start there. And then of course you can dig into the details of what some of those more sophisticated things are, but at a high level, that's what I would suggest.
Any initial stack that would come to your mind? Obviously, AMS is a minimum that you need to a larger pool of agencies. You got a phone system, VoIP, or whatever it may be. You need what I'm assuming it has a texting capability, or at least you need if you don't.
Here's an easy one. Yeah, so like an easy one I think would be, well, there's two that come to mind, like really easy ones that are really easy to use. Actually, three. All right, three easy ones.
Okay,
so
this is how it goes.
Live chat. I think chat is a super simple thing to add to a website. And if you think of it from an experience standpoint, most of us probably prefer chatting on websites than calling or emailing or filling out a form or anything else. And you can literally start that for free. You can go to Chatra, CHATRA.com, or there's a bunch of other chat solutions out there that you can literally plop onto your website and see how that works, right? So that's a really easy one. When we have a client sign up, I will send them a handwritten, quote unquote, card in the mail. They're not expecting it, which is why it's so effective. There are different ways to do that, of course. The service that we use is called Handwritten. It's HANDWRYTTEN.com. And again, you log on and the robot writes it with real ink, literally real ink, and it sends it out the door. And it's a great experience. And the third one that I would put out there is, and these I think are all things that basically any company, regardless of size, can use, right? A small scratch agency all the way up to, multi-state or whatever. The other one would be some sort of calendar scheduling solution. We use Calendly for that, calendly.com.
InsuredMine provides that, just to plug that in,
Absolutely. So if you're using InsuredMine, well, then you use that, whatever the end goal is, in this case, to streamline how people can book appointments with you, get a solution that works for something like that. And as Roshan said, that's built in. If it's not built in, see if you can find something, because from the end user standpoint, that's just an easier experience, right? I want to get on a call with you. Instead of going back and forth a bunch of times with emails, trying to book a 15-minute call, just have them do it and literally book it automatically while they see your availability in real time. So anyway, those are three quick ones, to answer your question, Roshan.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah. What about you, Andrew? What do you see from an agency perspective, and what would you recommend? Hey, here is the minimum tech stack that you want to look at.
Yeah, definitely. It's a really interesting question. And I echo Jeff's point where there's very often solutions looking for problems, right? And so we have to be careful of those types of things. But one thing that, but agree, generally with those basic points that Jeff, you brought up. Maybe like a slightly different take on that is, I think it actually depends on your agency and you mentioned size earlier, Roshan, for whether it's scratch or large. I also think it's the type of business you're selling and really who your customers are, and making sure you understand them well to meet them where they are. So an example might be, we have website on here, but if you sell commercial auto, 90% of your, policies are commercial auto, it probably makes sense to have, or definitely makes sense to have a website that's mobile friendly, right? Because a lot of those people are going to be doing that from their place of work, which is their truck, right? So I would sort of layer that in, all of these things into really understanding who your customers are and meeting them where they are. I think that's really important. And maybe another point is the technology tools are great. Chat is great. Texting is great. Email is great. But sometimes it's also, yeah, Jeff, to your point, really important to be able to sit down with somebody, to talk to somebody on the phone, not just, shoot them a text or shoot them an email, and would definitely echo the ability to get in touch with somebody very, very easily from your website, whether that's scheduling or just a number to call, which isn't always the case today. So yeah, that's maybe just like a not specific tools, because I think we've touched on some of those, but sort of how to think about which of those tools are right for your agency.
No, I like what you said, Andrew, and I want to emphasize on the fact that, even though we talk about technology toolkit, make no mistake, anybody, to think that technology toolkit is a no replacement for your human-to-human interaction. And I just got back last night, midnight, from one of our trip yesterday, which several of you would know where I was, as I always post things out. We met one prospect yesterday. I'm so pumped, still so thrilled about the fact that, it was our first meeting. And in one meeting, we closed 160 user agency in one day, first meeting and closed. And that would not have happened. It was not a human-to-human interaction.
Yeah.
So yes, we can talk about technology toolkit all day long, but it is no replacement for personal touch.
Totally. I think that one of the things, just adding on to that real quick, one of the things that we see is the right, or the mentality that we are seeing succeed is not how can I do as little work as possible by using technology, but how can I automate or reduce the work that that technology can help with, so that I can focus on the things that only I can do, or only a human can do, or that are unique to being a risk advisor, or whatever capacity you are in the business, and just allowing you to spend more of your time focusing on that stuff rather than scheduling appointments or whatever it is.
Yep, right. No, I totally agree. It's not a replacement. It is just to enhance your experience with that.
Exactly.
The second person, or it's also efficiency game. It's not, yeah, totally. So I hear some of your, so again, I just want to continue adding to that list as we hear, talking about how do we add more into the phone systems, chat is, as you guys talked about. Talk to me again on the payment. You said about mobile friendly. So Jeff, I want to pick your thoughts on, is now every website not mobile friendly? What do you guys see when you bring another agency who was not your customer and you're replacing their website? Do you see that, oh no, everybody is mobile friendly today? What do you see?
No, not at all. There are still agencies that don't have a website at all. No web presence, which is, you're definitely kind of, I think, starting in the hole at this point, if you don't at least have some presence out there. 5-star reviews and, just being visible is half the battle sometimes. But no, I mean, so obviously if it's not a website, it doesn't matter. It's not working on mobile because it doesn't work anywhere. It doesn't exist. Some legacy websites obviously aren't. It's obviously important. It's just kind of common sense, though. I don't think you need a bunch of stats from me or anybody else to realize that, okay, yeah, like we have smartphones these days, like they're pretty popular and a lot of people are searching on them. Surprise. So if they get to your website, hopefully it'll end up working. So there's that usability part of it and being visible, but it helps with search, right? So SEO, it's part of SEO, which is also part of being visible, but it's just an experience. It's a good experience for people. If they're trying to, how frustrating is it if you want to go to a restaurant, all you want to do is book a reservation and you want to give them a call to say you're going to be running 5 minutes late or something. You try to figure out where the website is. You go to it. Where's the phone number? Or is it under the little hamburger menu thing flying out up there? Is it down in the footer? Is it on the about page? It's like, that's not a good experience. So if you're trying to streamline the experience, whether it's for prospects or clients or referral partners or anybody else, you obviously want to make that stuff available and accessible, regardless of the device that folks are using, right? So yeah, mobile is certainly important, but I think in general, it's whatever the channel is that people are trying to reach you on, it should work for them. We still see across, like I mentioned before, we have about 1,200 plus now sites. We have this interesting perspective across the country on what performance of websites and agency usage and that sort of thing. And the mobile, the number of visitors coming from mobile still isn't above 50%, believe it or not, for insurance agencies. So sometimes there's this misconception that, oh my gosh, 90% of our traffic is coming from an iPhone or something. And it's an increasing number that's coming from a smartphone, but it's not a majority yet on average across the industry. Interesting stat.
Let me flip that for Andrew from a payment perspective. What do you see? How much of the payment has become digital?
Great question. And I think that's, there's still definitely lots and lots of offline payments in insurance. And there's a bunch of different types of those. It's not just, a check. It could be, someone dropping off a check to an agency bill. It could be someone mailing a check to a carrier. In small agencies, probably the same ones that don't have websites, they might still accept cash or money orders. And then there's also the sort of wild ways in which insureds can pay, whether that's like, escrow account for homeowners for their homeowners policy. But that's actually kind of the tip of the iceberg. The real area where we see a huge amount of offline payments that aren't digital is actually on the back end, right? So that might be commission payments from carriers to agencies. It might be or to wholesalers. It might be the way the money moves from, an agency billed account to an MGA or a wholesaler, and then from them to a carrier. Some MGAs still have check to fax, right? Like that's pretty crazy in 2022. So there's still time. Maybe that counts as online. I don't know. It's a fax, but I don't consider it a digital payment. But there's a huge amount of offline payments in the industry, both for the insured, but also the way the funds move through the industry. And we're seeing an increasing demand, obviously, from the consumer experience to pay digitally, right? Everyone wants to do that. It's similar to Jeff. We don't have to convince anyone of that. But where we're seeing a more interesting pull is within the industry, between agencies, wholesalers, carriers, all that, because COVID really changed things, right? People weren't in the offices. They weren't in their lock boxes. Handling checks became it became like a, critical function or whatever it was called during COVID, where they had to go into work just to do that. And it's also very expensive. The average cost of handling a check is upwards of $20 for a business. So, it's really something that within the industry is looking to digitize further.
That's a very interesting, and see, that's one of the reasons, I'm taking a step back and saying, hey, when we were evaluating who do we want to bring on a panel for this one, my first two choices were you two, because, well, there is one more segment I do see where there is so much rapid change has happened and will continue to disrupt. Is beyond this is the quoting side of things, how the quoting engines are changing, the commercial side especially. But that is still in an early days. Talking about the website, talking about the payment, these are two fundamental things that one has already started seeing a lot of traction, another which we see is a big one. So I just want to have that perspective from both of you. Perfect. So let's go on to the next question here. We talked about, where we start, and then I want you guys to start thinking from a segmentation perspective. Sales, operations, size, how else are you segmenting your organization? So, I know it's kind of extension to the previous question, but, as this is a captive audience of InsuredMine, and agencies are from one agent agency to 100 agent agency as well. And so, if you can pick your top two or top one in each of these things, that will help them get some clarity. Because, you talk about a website, a producer literally does not care that much if he's in a part of a 20 agent agency, right? That's some other department's work. So if we can segment that, imagining a medium-sized agency and larger, what one tool would you care to add to that stack? In sales, let's go ahead. Andrew, why don't we start with you this time?
One tool in sales. Gosh, that's a tough question.
One or two, you don't need to just pick
one. I think I'm going to give a bad answer again, which is not a specific tool. It's more just an approach around how to think, how we would suggest thinking about it, or we've seen folks think about it and who are being successful. And it really comes down to, whether you're a one-person agency or 100-person agency, it's going to be very different. But a unique challenge in the insurance business is, at some point, everyone hits this challenge where growing becomes very hard, because whether you're a 100-person agency, in order to get the capital to invest in the agency, there has to be some sort of, succession purchasing, and, pricing is crazy. Or if you're a one-person agency, you just can't afford to hire somebody else right now. And so what we've seen work well is folks who identify what the limiting factor is to their growth. And that's going to be different for different businesses, different agencies, different ways of being run. But there's really two categories. One, is it revenue, right? Like, do I need to generate more? And obviously revenue to some degree solves everything. Do I need to generate more revenue so that I can continue to invest in the business? Or am I actually generating enough revenue, but I'm spending a lot on cost, my margin is low, and can I actually improve my operational process, right, to reduce that cost, to actually take a little bit more margin to, again, reinvest in the business? And we see very different things for different types of businesses. I'll again just use an example that we see, well, not to, go into sales mode, but just because this is an area we think about all day.
Of course.
With very small agencies, one area where they can get more sales is by selling different types of products, right? So if you're in a coastal state or a high-risk state, which, vast majority of the US population is, that means selling excess and surplus lines. That means having to deal with agency bill. Tons of agencies, tons of small 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-person agencies say, nope, no way. We don't have the ability to do that because of the cost associated with having an operational person, or the opportunity cost of not selling. And so, that's an example where maybe you can sell 10, 20%, you can actually serve customers who you might not be able to. And, that's one example where a tool can actually just
diversifying the
20% more revenue.
Product.
What's that?
Would you say diversifying the portfolio of products that they are offering?
That's right. Yeah. That's a great way to put it. And the ability to service them, because you don't want to sell a product that costs more to sell than it generates in revenue, obviously. Yeah.
So, how I look at it, in sales, obviously there is a multiple segment, whether it's about, capturing the data where all these forms comes in the picture. Then when you're talking about quoting, there is this quoting products come in picture. Then, you're managing the sales funnel, then the CRM comes into picture, right? And again, I think each of them has a role to play. But as you guys said, depending on where you are in your journey of your agency, one or the other or all of them become important. Jeff, back to you.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I've seen work for successful agencies is a couple of things. Niching down. So the riches are in the niches, sometimes you hear people say. And I've seen this firsthand. So I mentioned at the very beginning, my dad worked at Chubb. He started as an underwriter, but eventually ran a big agency that Chubb bought called Personalized Insurance Brokerage. And it was about 300 employees across 30 field offices. That was eventually sold to Hub International. Talk about being very niche down. Just personal lines and high net worth, rich people kind of insurance. It was owned by Chubb, which made sense. And I was in high school or college when I watched that thing take off.
3 years ago?
It was a while ago. It was a little while ago, Roshan. Before the gray hairs started coming out, that's for sure. So I think niching down is the way to do it. And I've seen this play out time and time again. There's a guy, Derek, up in Northeast Pennsylvania, focused on car dealerships and is killing it, goes into car dealerships and basically says, let me come in here and work as an employee to get a sense of how the operations works, and restaurants and, all these different commercial lines, but also on the personal line side, whether it's real estate, getting referrals from real estate agents, that sort of thing, works really, really well. So I would say always figure out ways to niche down and then segment whatever the data is in the system. So for example, if you're using InsuredMine, segment the data so that you can figure out where these different niches are. You don't have to just focus on one your entire life, but at least segment it, and your approach can be kind of thoughtful for each one of those, right? Perhaps you create content and educational content, or have people come into the office or do a webinar or whatever it is just for real estate agents or whatever, right? The other thing that I'll kind of just add to that is I think there's a lot of opportunity for a lot of folks. I saw a comment over here saying someone said it's for small agency, it's hard to do a bunch of things. Absolutely. So I'll give you a really quick kind of case study in a nutshell version. There's a client that I talked to a couple months ago, basically has the system, which you can do this in InsuredMine, I believe, Roshan, automate based on the renewal date.
Yep.
So for example, if the policy is coming up for renewal 45 days before that renewal happens, what she has set up is the system automatically does this, sends off an email to the client with a link in it saying, hey, by the way, your insurance policy with us is coming up for renewal. If you wouldn't mind, click this link so I understand if there's anything that we need to talk about. That link happens to take her to the website, the active agency website, but it doesn't matter if it's a website that we are doing for her or whatever it is, wherever the form is. And the client works through the form, it comes back into the agency, and then all of a sudden she has all these different gaps of coverage and upsell opportunities identified, completely automated, right? So the response rate has been nuts with that. So it's completely automated. When I was talking to her, it was 2.5 months into it. She had 30 some new umbrella policies written automatically just because of that one automation. I talked with her a month or two ago. It's approaching 100 now new policies written because of that automation. So when you think of it from a niching down perspective, but also using a really simple quote unquote automation, it's not a scary thing. It's just have a system send an email, link to a form, and then all of a sudden you get all this inbound interest basically from your existing clients that you can use to upsell, cross-sell, but ultimately make sure they have the protection they need and the right coverage. And it's a total wow factor too, by the way. It's not coming across as salesy. It's coming across as, hey, by the way, I want to make sure you have your stuff protected. And this is how we do it here at ABC Agency. Look at how organized we are, right? So a lot of benefits to that.
You hit on one of the core secret sauce of InsuredMine right now. You know, one of our biggest strength, what has evolved to become, we started, we were focused so much on sales and marketing and stuff, but now what has become that, that holy grail right now is the renewal process. It is so robust and it is so impactful. We have seen, a couple percentage point moving like this, and that is huge. And as you said, that is exactly right. We start somewhere between 75 to 90, minus 90 days, and we are building that. And one of those automation stages are where you are starting to kind of quasi prospect for cross-selling or, opportunity identification within that particular client.
Yeah, and she's doing the same thing now. She's all excited, right? It's like, whoa, this actually worked. Holy smokes. What else can I do like this? So now she's doing exactly that, where she's looking at policies, again, using the system, right? It's not like she's looking through charts and trying to identify who has auto but no home, or home and no auto, or whatever, right? The system just says, here they are. So she's doing the same thing. So now if there is a client in the database, one of her clients is in there and they have home but no auto, for example, as a really easy example for us to visualize, well, then there's an email that she drafted and customized so it reflects her style and her agency. And it's the same thing. And it links to her website and with one of those interactive graphics on it I was talking about where they could start learning. And it's a wow factor for people. So it's a really simple thing to do. It's not very complicated, but it can be very effective.
Yes, thank you. All right, heading on to our next question, why technology has become so important? The reason we put this question is obviously technology has been there, a sophisticated way to say, anything that human is not doing is tech, and it has been there for hundreds of years. But what is making it kind of becoming the center stage? Why, so many people are listening to this live and, and we are bringing all the thought leaders and, we are talking about this, spending so much time and energy around it. Why technology is taking the center stage? Obviously, as you can see, the customer experience that, we have spent so much time today talking about, the optionality of things, and is because, to an extent, I don't want to say the policy focused AMS, or I want to say it's the product focused applications is transitioning to customer focused systems. So, and that's what you guys are all about, So talk to me about, why technology is becoming important.
Have it,
go ahead, Andrew. Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
I think there's I think technology has been important for a long time in various parts of our lives, and it's, makes its way into those different parts at different times. And right now, more than ever, we're seeing the importance of technology in insurance. And I think there's a few big driving factors behind that. One is the consumer experience, right? People, as you mentioned, people want to be met where they want to be, right? They want to transact how they want to be. They want to talk to people how they want to. They want to learn in ways that, are definitely evolving. And we just think about our purchase patterns of every kind of product and how they're evolving. That's not unique to insurance, but now we need to sort of evolve that for insurance. And maybe it's it's taken longer in insurance there's a bunch of reasons, right? As being in the business of risk management might make people in insurance risk averse to adopt new technologies. I think that's, certainly part of it. I think another bigger thing is people, regular consumers don't shop for insurance all that often, right? So the pain point isn't felt as frequently as it might be with buying groceries or something like that we do a few times a week. So it makes it a little bit slower, but now, it's really changed and technology is becoming important. And I would say the second thing as to why technology more than ever has become so important is just the huge, and maybe this is again biased and unique to our world that we spend all our time on, but just how much the ways of working and doing business evolved as a result of COVID. I mean, just the number of virtual meetings is an example that doesn't really impact, that's kind of the tip of the iceberg. Think about all these other things that impact how insurance companies work, down to, cashing of checks and things like that. And I think that's kind of the bottoms up reason as to why technology is becoming super important, as well as that sort of top down customer evolving demand and preference.
Yeah. Jeff, what about you?
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize that at one point the telephone was technology.
Yes.
Like literally, like a wired telephone was technology. Like electricity was technology at one point. The car was these are just things that eventually become commonplace. And the opportunity, I think, especially in an industry like insurance, where there is a legacy component to it. There's the other side too, which are you have more and more agencies that are embracing and adopting, and some are all digital and digital first and no offices and all this. But you also have a big component of the 36,000 agencies in the country that are still, they're built on a really solid book of business with a lot of relationships, a lot of referrals, and that ain't going anywhere. That's a really healthy business. So it's not like you have to put a bunch of tech in something to be considered successful either. But the opportunity exists for those that do want to embrace whatever the technology is to get ahead of most others. And that's what I've always gotten excited about with technology. It's not just like, oh, wow, tech is so cool. It's like, wow, like if we use this one thing, we can wow people. They're going to say, well, how did you end up doing that? Well, it's because we have this secret weapon that is whatever the tech is, right? Enables that. Like Andrew was saying before, it really just makes us like superhuman. It doesn't replace the people. It just makes us look like we're amazing. Like, how did they remember to do that? How did they send me this? How do they make sure they don't drop anything? That's amazing. So I think it's an opportunity. And I think that's why technology has become important. For those that understand that it is an opportunity, it's not necessarily a hard and fast requirement for every single business, but for those that embrace it and use it, it makes a heck of a difference. And it can definitely be.
I want to challenge that, Jeff, to an extent. That is it still that awe factor that, oh, how did they remember and how cool is that they send me a birthday message, or it has become a table stake that they are expecting that at a minimum?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And I think we have to remember too that experiences aren't just with other insurance agencies. That's not who the competition is. From a client experience standpoint, it's like Amazon or whatever. Like you order something and your paper towels are on your front porch 2 hours later. All right, well that's pretty cool. How'd that happen? There's a heck of a lot of tech that goes behind making that happen. So sure, I think technology in general and solutions are incredibly important. I guess my point, Roshan, is if you're an agency and you've been around in Main Street USA and you have a huge book of business and everyone knows your name and comes by your office, it's maybe not as important as other agencies, right? That are trying to be in different areas of the country, more competitive areas of the country, that sort of thing. So again, it goes back, I think, into what we were talking about before, which is technology it doesn't replace the people, right? It's really the people. So if the people are still doing what the people do and are making it a really good business based on that, great. But the technology can obviously enable that and
Fair enough.
help push it forward. So it's really important. Obviously, I'm a tech guy. I really believe in this stuff. And I'm not saying not to use it by any means. I'm just saying that I think there's a adoption curve, and eventually everybody uses telephones now. Eventually everybody has a car. Eventually everybody has a website. Eventually everybody has whatever, CRM. Eventually, it's like, but the people that adopt that sooner rather than later, are obviously the ones that get ahead.
Yeah. So technology to be most adopted in the near future, again, there are a few which has picked up pretty well. As I said, quoting is one of them. App, we are seeing some good tractions, chatbot, Jeff, you mentioned about,
Yeah.
again, I think one thing which is not there, which again, we can get biased about, the payment platform becoming more and more digital as well. CRM obviously has found a pretty solid footing, what's next? What do you guys think here is going to define the technology for the next 5-10 years?
Yeah, I think these are almost like, we often find ourselves where we're like, oh, once we've done that, technology will be done, check, which is obviously never the case in all of human history. So it's a hard question to think about, but, trying to take a little bit of that perspective, I think we're still kind of in the early innings, right? Like a lot of this stuff is very, I hate to say table stakes, but like this is just a lot of like digitization and, automation and ownership over the existing core competencies that need to be run out of an agency. And so I think the technologies that will like come after that are the sort of optimizations on top of that. So one thing, just making stuff up as I go that I think could be the case is, great, now we have all of this information, customer touch points, all this information from our AMS. We're seeing how people are paying and if they're financing it and if they're paying on time and all that stuff, right? How they're interacting with our website. We have all this data that's now being generated by these sort of core competency tools. And I think a next step will be, how do we actually use that to make sense of our business and find new business that makes, that we like, right? And likes us. Who are we placing, with carriers? Where can we get more profit share? How can we optimize our marketing based on the customer profiles who are coming toward us or, referring us, whatever it may be. So really sort of summarizing that, taking all of the data that's being created from these core competency tools that are now digital and using that to not just run the business, but improve the business.
Yeah. What about you, Jeff?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think in so many ways, the more sophisticated and the more capable technology becomes, ideally, the less visible it is. You know what I mean? I think like back not that long ago, and there's some companies that are very much like this. If you think about, so again, think about it from the experience side of things. Let's say that you're working with your cable provider, right? Like the notoriously bad customer service kind of example. And you call in or whatever, you send an email, and then you get a ticket number back, and then you got a number, and then you get a whole thing. It's a big process or whatever. That's a case where technology is definitely a play there, but the technology is almost getting in the way a little bit. It doesn't feel, it's like, oh, there's definitely something in here that's taking away from the human element. So I think ultimately what we're going to find is that the technology becomes sophisticated enough where it doesn't feel like it even really exists. Like, sure, we're all using it, but it just greases the skid so much where we don't even realize that we're using it anymore. I think it's like a telephone. If we go backwards here, I didn't plan on talking about telephones today, but like telephones, we don't even think about.
Now we know what is his next venture.
Yeah, I'm going to create a landline, Roshan. Do you want one?
Not today.
You need a jack in your office there. Hook a phone into it. The old rotary dial, like my grandma used to have, you know, with a circle, and you had to wait for the clicks to go
And if
by.
you miss one number, do it again.
You got to do it again.
What's old is new again, right? Always the circle of innovation.
And I remember my grandma didn't have the right calling plan. It was too expensive for her to call out. So we would call into her and it would ring twice or something. And then she would know it was us calling. It was like this whole complicated thing we did. But I guess my point is that now we don't think twice about calling somebody. We probably don't think twice about chatting with somebody. We don't think twice about sending a text message, whether it's to a business more and more, or whether it's to a friend, or, you know, these things kind of just fade off into the background. Mm-hmm. And I think ultimately that's what's going to end up happening long term. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be like, oh, use this platform for this and log in here to do this and go here and here's your ticket and here. I think all that stuff's going to kind of subside ultimately and just become ingrained and become connected and just become part of a holistic kind of solution. Ultimately.
Yeah, no, I totally align with that thinking, and that would have been my position, you know, is that in physics, as we call singularity, you know, I don't want to throw a complex concept here, but, you know, that's what it is heading into. You know, the technology is melting into one another, and today InsuredMine has become no more just a product. It has become an ecosystem. And that ecosystem, as I always say, you know, there is world-class CRM out there. Why we win against those world-class CRM is not because our product is superior. It's because our product provides the plumbing that other superior products do not. And that's our edge. The integrations, the ecosystem that it creates, that, you know, if I have InsuredMine, I got it all. I don't need to go and buy 20 different things and set it all up.
Yeah.
And I think that's the advantage.
And the other key too, I think, Roshan, and the reason why InsuredMine's successful is because talking about niching down, you niche down, I niche down, Andrew niche down, successful insurance agencies niche down. So you know what the solutions are and what the problems are that you're trying to solve. And I think that's another piece where technology, I think, will become more focused in a lot of ways as well. On very specific, because different industries and different businesses have unique challenges. It's hard to put a square peg that's built for the world into a round hole. That's a very specific kind of, need. Yeah. So I think that's
awesome. Well, while we go to the next question, just want to do a quick time check. We have 11 minutes. We will save the last couple minutes for logistics discussion, but we have 9 minutes where we'll continue 2 more questions. And so if you guys have questions, feel free to write it now. We will take 2 to 3 questions at most, but this has been very involved discussion. It seems like, 3 friends just sitting and chatting and somewhere, it's just fun conversations. So let's quickly talk about, the agent of the future. And I think there has already been a lot of pieces that we already talked about, talking about niches, talking about, making technology your second nature. Don't let it become a hindrance, and then cross-selling or diversifying a portfolio of product, So again, I know we have already checked some of those, but I'll get back to you guys on, talk to me what agent of the future looks like.
So I would say niche down, like I mentioned before. And if it were me, if I were starting a scratch agency today and trying to build it for the future, I would hone in on something that was pretty niche down, and I'd start creating a ton of content around it. And the content would be, I'd put it wherever I could put content, whether it's YouTube or on the blog of the website, or figure out TikTok and figure out Instagram, like whatever you're figuring out, because ultimately I think that's where you're going to play in the future. If you can imagine getting your ideal clients coming to you versus having to go out and seek them, that's why that content game is important. So I think agents of the future are savvy enough to realize that there are different channels, primarily social channels, and different ways to get the message out there, almost like fishing. And then you're attracting the right kind of fish to the agency, and eventually that becomes the groundswell that supports a really successful agency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned about TikTok, and we have on the chat here, Whitney. Man, I love their agency and the TikTok videos they're making. It's just awesome. Guys, if anybody is following her, if not, you should follow how an insurance agency is killing with TikTok. These guys are just
He's
awesome.
Excited.
Yes. Yeah. Andrew, back to you. What does the agent of the future look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think we definitely touched on a lot of it, but we talk a lot about sort of the super agents of the future, and helping those people come to fruition and really grow their businesses. But I think the agents of the future will be the people who definitely, to Jeff's point, are able to acquire customers in a way that's, relevant to where those customers are. But again, you can only acquire as many customers as you're able to handle and service. So it'll be about businesses that figure out, again, within their niche, right? And insurance is so huge that you can find a niche and still have a huge business, but who know how to also service and work with them in a very, very effective way so that they can work with sort of more customers or more premium per producer. And I think historically it's kind of been, okay, choose a few big accounts or slightly more small accounts, but you can't do a ton of small accounts or even that many big accounts because of the nature of, acquiring and servicing them. And I think in the future, we'll see people use, these new ways to acquire customers as well as service them to have really, really much larger books than has just been possible to date. And I'm really excited about that. Mm-hmm. It'll be kind of like, winner take most. I think we'll see a lot of that. Of the best agents will have a disproportionate amount of the business because they will have focused in on these things that we've spent the last hour talking about very, very well.
Yeah. The risk and reward, which I think you just clued into that, the winner takes the most. And, I was talking to several of these agency CEOs in the last couple of weeks, and the intent of that conversation was, hey, there is a downturn, increase in the oil, gas prices, inflation and everything. How does you guys see this? Obviously there is a sense of confidence in those agency owners who have built a very customer-centric, tech-focused organization. And, this both is very important that, you have a tech that is enabling you and that is enabling you to be customer-centric. And if you have those two, he says, I am not worried because I have a very solid, efficient process and my customers will stay with me, because if anybody is losing is those guys who are not in touch with their customers.
Totally agree with that. Yeah. And that's something that can't be replaced. You're going to oftentimes, I'm sure that every single person watching this has spent more on some product or service because the experience was a better experience, or because the person that you bought it from had a likability and a trust factor, and you had a relationship built up with that person. And I think that's incredibly important. I've seen that firsthand with Forge 3. That's a lot of the we just did a big study on our clients, and you look at the retention, and our retention is 90% plus on an annual basis, which is exceptional. And when you ask why, it's because of the relationships in whatever that form. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's really important, Raj. And I think, and that's again where we use technology internally to enable that. There's no way we could do it if we didn't have some sort of method to our madness. Yeah. And going forward, that's going to be incredibly important. And it makes you more efficient. So if you think about it just from a dollars and cents standpoint, you may not have to hire another person or another 2 people or 3 people if you have something, the magic sauce of some solution, technology, whatever, that makes that work for you. Like, how cool is that? That's awesome, right?
Melissa Stallings, she is opening a can of worm. I don't even want to talk about, which is
not enough time for that one.
What AMS do you guys think is a good one, man? That's a whole 3-hour discussion, Melissa. But there is, there is not one which is good in everything. It depends on what you want, and I think not to say a management system is good or bad. I like this quote from one of our agency owner, and he said, "Roshan, InsuredMine makes agency management system tolerable." And I love that thinking that, okay, we all know, one technology is not good to do everything. But if we can enable that base with something superior to, get what we need, I think that is what the value is. And I think that's what InsuredMine is focused on. Okay, AMS can do ABC. Hey, how can I add the next 23 letters, alphabets in that and make it, a full A to Z.
Yep.
With that, one last, one line answers on role of insurance technology in future. Anything that would, how should an agency view technology? And I think you guys have answered that, that, it should be an enabler.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's necessary. How are you going to get from where you are now to the state next door if you don't have a car or something?
Mm-hmm.
Like you need it to do what you need to do, whether it's driving to another state or whether it's flying across the country on an airplane, or you need the technology. It's a critical part of what we do. Some of it's more cutting edge. Are you going to go on a rocket with Elon Musk and head up to Mars? Maybe not. But are you going to get in an airplane and fly to see your grandma across this? Yeah, probably. And that's where the opportunity is, right? So the folks that understand what the opportunity is and use the technology, whether it's cutting edge for them or whether it truly is bleeding edge and the first of its kind, that's the wow factor. That's what makes clients ultimately stay year after year.
All right. As we wrap up a lot of this Q&A and getting all this fun conversations going on the chat here, as we hit the last couple of minutes, couple of logistics. All of you on the call, I see a lot of those familiar names and familiar faces, I would say. If you're not on the Facebook group of InsuredMine, again, that's an old screenshot, but at least this will go and look for the group, not just the page. And probably, Montserrat, you can drop a link if that helps folks to plug in. Be a part of it so you can hear all this chatter around, everything we talk. We try to do this every 2 weeks on come up with different topics. And as you can see, we have covered most of it. And our next topic is on August 4th, which is security by Archway. So we are bringing a very special guest here because security has become a thing that everybody should, think about, from an agency perspective. And I actually wrote an article just a week ago about why InsuredMine invested in pen test, which is penetration testing on our application. It's a very expensive endeavor, but we did that because we wanted to make sure all our multiple thousand users, their data, their systems is secured. And, it's a wonderful experience we went through. It was very painful, but what it did was it looked at every vulnerability our system could have had. We made sure we patched everything. As we say, the strength of a chain is its weakest link. So we wanted to make sure all of those weak links was strengthened further. And this will be another way to look at, now we got our side done. Let's make sure you have done your piece as well. So let's talk about security in our next session. And then a couple more coming up is economies of scale and startup agency. And again, this is one economies of scale talking about the large agency, startup agency. We're going to talk about the small agencies. So again, wonderful topics here. We cannot wrap up the day without thanking our guest here, Andrew and Jeff, for sharing all this insight. It seems like both of you can be a wonderful keynote speaker where we can just spend an hour just with each of you. I don't know if it did justice to, split the time, but nonetheless, very, very, very humbled to have you both here and joining me.
My pleasure. Always good seeing you, Roshan, and chatting with you. Same, Andrew.
Talk again. Thank you, guys. And thank you all.
Thank you.